Peter has gone through hell in a handbag. Mary Jane left him, Ben Reilly has turned into a villain, and he lost Miss Marvel on his watch. But the biggest issue is that he has been ignoring the gangs of New York as they have been preparing for something big. And today begins the gang war. But first, we need to see what Miles' opinion on Peter has become at this point. This is Comicstorian. I take comic books and I break them down into digestible bites. The point of this is to give you an audio drama so you know what to add to your collection. If you enjoy this type of content, make sure you look for us on Spotify and Comicstorian Full Story. At the wedding of Randy Robinson and Janice Lincoln, also known as the Beetle, Janice's father Tombstone was gunned down. At the same moment, Hammerhead took out Madame Masque without the other crime lords of the city's knowledge. While the criminals of the city begin to make moves to take over their rivals' territory, Mayor Luke Cage is still trying to repeal Fisk's law, which outlaws masked heroes in New York City, with the aid of Randy Robinson. Now in a meeting of the criminal underworld in the Bronx, the crime lords of the city argue amongst themselves, demanding to know who is attacking each other's territories. But Hammerhead sits back smiling, pointing fingers, sowing mistrust amongst his rivals for the full power of the city. The criminals begin to argue over Tombstone's territory, even though Hammerhead points out that the crime lord isn't dead yet. Suddenly, the door to the meeting bangs open, revealing the White Rabbit and Janice Lincoln. Tombstone looks at them both with a raised eyebrow. "You don't got no business here, Janice. Your father's seat is currently empty," he points out, and Janice nods, sitting down in the seat normally taken by her father. "Let me fix that for you," she says, but the crime lords begin to argue, pointing out that she just can't take a seat because of her father. She has to earn her place at the table. Hammerhead smiles, leaning forward. "Someone's trying to get the superheroes legalized in New York City again, and we gotta stop him. If you want a seat at the table, you gotta take care of him for us, which means you gotta kill Randy Robinson," he says as he pushes a photo of Janice's almost husband towards her. She pauses for a moment as the crime lords all turn to her, and finally, she stands. "Give me 24 hours, and while I'm gone, nobody touches that seat." Later in the city, Spider-Man is leaping through the air, whipping 2 web lines after Slide. "You sure you don't want to give up?" Spider-Man calls out, but the webs bounce off of Slide's frictionless suit. "Where would the fun in that be, Spider-Man?" the criminal calls out, but Spider-Man points out that the criminal is merely wasting the Spider-Men's time. Slide turns back in surprise. "Spider-Man?" He turns around just as Miles fires a web line at him, but Slide slides up the web line without stopping. "Catch me if you can, Spider-Nerds!" he shouts, but Miles merely leaps off, powering up his new electric venom blade, slicing through the web line, sending Slide plummeting towards the roof and knocking him out. Both spiders land on the roof and survey their handiwork. "Dang, so you got a sword now? Guess a lot's changed since I've been gone," Spidey says, and Miles nods, not happy with his friend. "Yeah, man, guess that's what happens when you ghost folks," Miles says, and Peter tries to argue, but Miles stops him, pointing out that Peter's been absent. Miles has had to step up and be the city's Spider-Man, when he could have really used a friend and a mentor. Peter tries to argue, but he realizes that Miles is right. "I'm sorry I let you down. I've been making a habit of saying that these past few weeks," he finally admits, and Miles points out that others, like Luke Cage and Randy Robinson, have also been looking for Peter's help, and he turns to swing away. "It seems like you forgot, with great power also comes great responsibility." Peter thanks Miles for reminding him, and the heroes separate. Elsewhere in the city, Randy has gathered a protest to call for a repeal of Fisk's law. He looks at the massive crowd while explaining the situation to Luke Cage on the phone. "I'm about to go talk to a group of supporters, and I want to give them hope," Randy tells Luke, who is shocked at the sound of the crowd. Unknown to Randy, Hammerhead's limo is slowly trying to pass the crowd of protesters, his girlfriend asking what Hammerhead is going to do about all this. "What we always do," he says with a smile. "Find the one making the noise." As Randy is heading down the protest, he suddenly whirls around to the sound of someone's voice in the stairwell. "You're done, Randy," Janice says, and Randy looks up at her, surprised to find her in the Beetle costume. Her wings hum as she lowers down towards him in the stairwell. "You should have stayed out of this. You came to scare me? I ran out of scared watching my parents dodge bullets at our wedding." Now angry, Beetle grabs him, slamming him into the wall. "Poor little Randy, almost married a thug, a murderer. Is that what you think I am?" she tells him. He shakes his head. "I bet whoever sent you does." Janice charges up her fist, preparing to attack, but she can't do it. She releases Randy and pulls off her mask, revealing tears underneath. "You gotta go. Just leave the state. She tries to tell him, but Hammerhead isn't stupid. He knew that Janice was no killer. Randy looks up in surprise as the gunman comes down the stairs. There he is! Should have kept your mouth shut, Rabbitson! The gunmen shout. They raise their weapons and Randy leaps in the way of his former girlfriend. Look out! He shouts before his cries are drowned out by the echoes of gunshots. Later at the mayor's office, Luke Cage puts down his phone in surprise, but there is a sound at the window as Spider-Man lands on the ledge. Luke, we gotta talk about Randy. Luke looks at him nodding. We'll do what we can, he says quietly, but Spider-Man drops in the room telling his friend that he'll do anything to help repeal Fisk's law. I want to help, Spidey says, and Luke looks at him in shock. No one told you? At the hospital, Randy is being wheeled into the ER, Janice by his side trying to tell the doctors what happened, as Randy fights for his life from the multiple gunshot wounds. Robbie is there. He looks at Janice in her Beetle costume and shouts for her to get away from his son. The doctors keep moving, and Janice finally turns around, running away in tears. Meanwhile, at Hammerhead's apartment, his girlfriend is lounging on the bed. She holds up Madame Mask's mask in surprise. You kept your mask? She asks, and Hammerhead nods, explaining that you get so few trophies in his line of work. She looks at her boyfriend and tells him that she doesn't like that he had Randy shot. People liked him. Instead of scaring them, you might have woken them up, she says. But Hammerhead grabs her, throwing her to the ground, trying to prove his point, telling her that he is scary, so he needs to get the job done. He pours himself a drink and sits down in his favorite chair. Exactly as mean as I need to be, which is why I'm in charge of the room of psychos back there. A room full of killers that want nothing more than to kill each other. Laughing, he says that he's the reason that they want to kill each other and they don't even know it. That's called job security. But he isn't paying attention to the girl anymore and is unaware that she's coming up behind him with a pipe. She raises it over his head, bringing it down, cracking his skull. She then hits him again and again, knocking him off his chair and on the floor. He gasps for breath, but as he begins to bleed, she stands over him with a smile. I thought a little adamantium and magic would get through that thick skull of yours, she says, holding up the weapon to show him before bringing it down again and again, blood splattering everywhere. Until finally she's covered in it. She stops, turning to the window where Beetle is standing. I could prop him up if you want to take a few swings, the woman says, and Janice is shocked. What did you do? She gasps, and the woman just smiles. The same thing you came here to do, just beat you to it. Janice is still stunned as the woman walks over to pick up the mask that she left on the mantle. Wait, you're Madame Mask? She gasps in realization, and Mask smiles as she explains that she hired an impersonator that Hammerhead killed, so that she could get close to him and learn all of his dirty little secrets. Every gangland alliance that he turned to blood feud, he set them up, so I can knock them down, she says as she puts on the mask and turns away. She looks to Janice, explaining that the crime lords of the city will now go to war with each other, that they'll see this as an opportunity and strike while they can. And throughout the city, this very thing is starting. The crime lords are gathering together in force, and they're beginning to fight over every inch of New York. They all want war. I'm just giving it to them. I'll give them so much that they won't even notice when I start to take. Meanwhile, Spider-Man has arrived at the hospital room of Randy Robinson, finding Robbie sitting by his son's bedside. I don't know what to say, Spidey whispers, and Robbie looks at him in tears. You shouldn't be here. You should be out there. That's what he was fighting for. He was so convinced that you all did more good than harm, Robbie says, and he looks at Spider-Man, telling him to go out and catch the people who put his son in a hospital bed. Spidey doesn't hesitate. Understood. But the city is suddenly rocked by explosions as Peter looks out of the window in surprise. As fires have begun to erupt around the city, the gangs have met an open war in the streets, putting everyone at risk. Shortly at the mayor's office, Spider-Man meets with Luke Cage. We gotta talk. Luke looks at him. Then talk. Spider-Man tells him that they need to put this gang war down fast. I'm gonna do a lot of superheroing, and I don't want any distractions. Luke nods his head, promising to keep the police out of his way, but Spidey shakes his head as he walks to the window. Not my way, our way. I need a team, he says before swinging off into the night. And that concludes Gang War First Strike. The story's going to be moving fast, and we're going to be putting out a lot of videos for it, so like and subscribe because this story is a crossover, and it's to be continued.